G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video. Finally, I'm presenting you with the last couple of races of the official manufacturers series. So we've got some more videos coming, but this was one we did a couple of weeks ago, a Daytona road course in Group 3 for the manufacturers series. Okay, so first up, out for qualifying, of course, driving the Group 3 Genesis X. This is something I've started doing in qualifying now. They have turned slipstream off for qualifying, so sort of being behind another car does not give you an advantage down the straights. So it sort of makes sense in my mind. Why would I bother getting sort of mucked up and balked around by having other cars around me when I get no advantage by having said cars around me, or technically ahead of me specifically? But basically I just cancel back to the pits and do qualifying on my own, and we're going to go out for qualifying. Of course, we have a 10-minute session here, so we've got a good amount of time. Even by cancelling back to the pits, we still get a good 3 or 4 chances at having a really fast flying lap. Tyre wear, fuel use, all off. But this is going to be our first flying lap, our first banker, a 144.1, which currently is provisional second on the grid, but the qualifying session is still barely halfway complete. So we've still got a little way to go. We're a half a second off currently Massa. That second lap there was only a 44.4. We're going to stay on board for this lap 4 here and see how much of an improvement this one's going to be. Downshift to first and then a double upshift to third for the exit of all of these hairpins basically. So you'll see a similar technique as we go flat out through that little chicane there. And now braking up for turn 3. Technically, the corner numbering is very strange around this track. Maybe I can show a quick comparison of what it actually is versus what I think it should be, but of course a little person on YouTube here has absolutely no say whatsoever in the corner numbering exact sort of specifications of Daytona road course, of course. But anyway, we have to get back to the qualifying lap. You can see just a couple of tidy hairpins there. We've got one more to go here. Turning in on first gear and then double upshift to third for the exit. Slight bit of oversteer there, but we kind of caught it in time. You can see that sector split there is a little over 2/10 blue. We've got another sector split sort of immediately after for some reason. Then we're going to fly into the Le Mans chicane as it's officially called, and we can't cut this last one here. That last left-hand part of the chicane, you cannot cut whatsoever. You have to stay 2 wheels within the white line, otherwise you'll get yourself a swift penalty. Up towards the line, a 43.7. Fairly decent lap there. You can see it's only about a 1/10 off the pace set by Massa, 143.6. We'll see where that puts us on the grid after the Manufacturers Series introduction. Lovely as always, we meet ourselves on the grid and you can see my Genesis X sitting there in third position with the lovely Australian fan-made livery by Scotty on the car. So obviously a quite distinctive look there, making it quite easy to spot that I've been placed in third. So I qualified third. That's pretty good. I think this is also where I provisionally sat. So by the end of the session I had not lost any further positions, which was pretty good. And I've out-qualified some quite serious operators here. I know Ocean Zero is a fast driver and Heidebon as well for that matter down in 7th. So not perhaps having the best qualifying session, those two drivers. But nevertheless, we've just got to focus on our race, and I've decided to start on the medium tyre here. The strategy for today is quite interesting as well. So you got 2 or all 3 tyres are available, the soft, the medium and the hard, but only the medium and the hard are the required tyre for the race. So obviously the pit stop length, especially so at this track, is really long. So you want to minimise the pit stop. So in order to satisfy 2 tyre requirements using the minimum number of pit stops, it's only a 1-stop race. So you start your race on 1 tyre, you pit in once, and then you jump onto the second set of tyres. So we've decided to start on the medium here, and I'm catching up to the back of Awesome here, who's lost touch of the lead. So it's beginning to tell me that Awesome may be on the harder of the two tyres that we are going to be using in today's race. I've started on the mediums because I knew there were some fast drivers behind in Ocean Zero and even Dr. Kubrick and Meta 7 and Oa Yogurt. You know, people right there ready to take positions off me if I sort of started to, you know, be a little bit susceptible and be a little bit vulnerable. So I've decided we'll start on the softest tyre I can and just basically eyes forward. I do not want to fall back and get stuck in a massive battle behind, because then that will be a good result in this race swiftly down the toilet. But I think Awesome has decided to start on the hard tyre, and we have actually been held up a little bit on this opening lap here. Quite a narrow little infield section at this track, so it can be quite hard to get a move done, even with a tyre advantage. So I have a tyre advantage against Awesome, but I was not able to get past through the middle section there. So we're able to get past on one of the straights though, very long straights, very long slipstreaming opportunities here at this track, so we're able to get clean past Awesome there, and then that is going to be no further worries, although we will check out this gap. He had his hazards on actually all the way down the straight. Maybe he was trying to tell me he wanted a bump draft, because that's how I use the hazards as well, and I can probably understand how he may have wanted a bump draft, but unfortunately for Awesome I'm smarter than that, and I was able to quickly recognise that me on my medium tyres bump drafting a hard tyre runner is not the way to go. I did not want to be held up any more than I already had been on that opening lap. But as we head through this infield section now, let's just check out that gap to myself and Awesome. On the exits of these corners is where I'm going to be gaining the majority of the time. Right when we're trying to put the power down is when the tyre difference is going to be really, really obvious. And as you can see, we had those 4 traction zones, one after the other there, and that was just enough for me to open that gap up to Awesome to a distance of 1.3 seconds, and gaining as we got a much better exit out of the preceding corner. And as we head out onto this long flat out section through these bank turns in the Daytona oval section, we are just opening that gap up to Awesome, and I believe the Genesis isn't too bad in a straight line. In my experiences anyway, I don't find myself sort of wanting more straight line speed. I mean, you obviously want more straight line speed, but in terms of having a particularly disadvantageous car in terms of straight line speed, I don't find myself wanting more to be on parity with every other car. So the Genesis, I think, is a pretty good straight line machine. I absolutely nailed a Le Mans chicane as well. That gap to Awesome's opened up to 2.2 seconds, gap to Massa 2.5. So it's fairly obvious at this stage it's going to be a lonely first stint, because the gap behind's opening up. Actually, Ocean Zero's got past Awesome as well, so it was really, really important that I did get past Awesome, because he's dropping like a fly at the moment. He's down at 5th actually. Dr. Kubrick's also overhauled Awesome to come up into that 4th position there. So this is exactly, Awesome is demonstrating exactly why I didn't want to start on the hards, because now he's getting stuck in battles, getting, you know, mucked around and pushed around by other cars, and that is how you lose time. I just wanted a clean run out the front, and that's exactly what I've done. As we skip ahead to the end of lap 6, so predictably a rather lonely opening start of the race. Have a look at my lap times. Fairly consistent 145s, dipped into the 146s as the tyre wear begins to come on. The medium tyres aren't so great in terms of tyre wear. The hard tyres are really, really durable. So they're slow, but they last ages. So I'm not too worried about trying to, you know, minimise my number of hard tyre laps, because the hard tyres can actually pretty much stay on the pace for the majority of your stint. It's basically just sort of working out where that crossover point is for me. The key sort of difference, I would say, between myself and some of the other cars on the grid here is that this Genesis X is a fairly squirrely car in terms of rear traction. I think it just has a load of torque, because you just slam on the power too hard, even in 3rd gear, and the car can spin out. I mean, you can see I'm hanging on about 75% throttle as we head out of turn 7, I think. Depending on which track map you look at. But as we head down this straight, that gap on this lap to Ocean Zero has gone down to 3.3 seconds. So it was 4. I got it up to about 4 seconds, which kind of let me know that Ocean Zero may be on the hard tyres, and we'll see how the pit stops plan out, and that will be sort of confirmation confirmation as to which tyre everyone else around me is on. But yeah, that gap was 4 seconds. It's closed down to 3.4, and I did think at this stage Ocean Zero is probably on the hard, so it kind of felt like this was the crossover point where I was beginning to lose time to the hard tyre runners. So the medium tyres lost their edge, and like I mentioned previously, I wasn't too stressed out about trying to minimise and have the absolute minimum number of laps on these hard tyres as possible because of how durable they are. They will be a little bit slower, probably straight out of the box, but as the stint wanes on, there won't be too much of a pace difference or a pace deficit. In fact, with the fuel coming out of the car, I may even end up setting quicker laps at the end of the hard tyre stint. They are going to be cold straight out of the box, and I'm one of the earliest pitters actually. I think I'm probably the earliest pitter, and I've dropped down into 12th position, but crucially into some clean air. So you can see the majority of the field is actually basically still in one main pack. Pretty much just around this corner all the way up until the exit of the following left-hander is basically just a train of the majority of the field, basically second down to 11th. So really big fight that we could potentially get caught in here, but the thing we have to look out for is everyone else ahead going in for the pit stops. So there is a one pit stop, basically mandatory pit stop to do. Essentially it's mandatory, so I know everyone ahead of me is going to be going into the pits at some stage. It's just when that is the question. But I can expect a lot of these cars directly ahead of me, having started further down in the field, to have started the race on the hard tyre, which means you can probably run them till about lap 11, 12, 13 kind of realm, maybe even lap 14 if you're not particularly great on the medium tyres, although we do have one person pitting in, a medium tyre runner, Yuxing Star LBC, pitting in off the medium tyre. So I think in my practice races I did go 8 laps, but because I had that pretty good sort of comparison to another car on a hard tyre, I was able to see exactly when I started losing time, so I ended up pitting in 1 lap earlier. Massa out of the lead, pits in off the medium tyres, predictably on the medium tyres there. So he drove away straight from the start. He has the fastest lap of the race currently, which is a good, few tenths quicker than what I could manage deeper into my medium tyre stint. So, Massa at this stage is looking pretty good for the race victory. Oa Yoga in off the hards as well. Does anybody else come into the pits? I'm still waiting to see if Massa gets out ahead of me, because he had a massive gap as he sort of headed into the pit stops, and I think as we round turn 1, he has come out ahead of G. So he's up in 8. So we didn't jump Massa, which is to be expected because we were also behind him when we went in for our pit stop. So no undercut threat because we were just too far back. But we're currently down in 10th. Let's see if any more people go in for the pit stop. Some more hard tyre runners. There's Awesome in from 9th on the hard tyre. So he's had a pretty torrid first stint there. He's really made the not the best choice, I would say, in terms of strategy. But we'll kind of see the pros and cons of that a little bit later. Awesome comes out of the pits 5.2, 5.3 seconds behind me now. But he's going to have newer hard tyres. So he could potentially have a little bit of a pace advantage. Actually, he's going to have new medium tyres, sorry. So I will have to be careful there. Ocean Zero's in, along with Dr. Kubrick. Ocean Zero in off the hard tyre. So now he's going to be fast at the end on the medium tyre, and this is the main disadvantage of starting on that softer tyre, is now I'm stuck on the harder tyre when a lot of my competitors around me have the medium tyre bolted on the car. So Ocean Zero I think was actually the standout there. He was able to make the best of that opening stint on the hard tyre, whereas Awesome hasn't quite done the same job. Awesome 5 seconds behind me, and we've got a good 6 or 7 laps to go here, probably I think it's 7 including this one. So we will have to watch out for that. Ocean Zero's come out of the pit stop 1.5, 1.6 seconds behind me there. So I've switched over to the radar because I know Ocean Zero is on a medium tyre here. I'm sort of floundering around on the hards. That being said, my pace isn't awful. I'm in the 46s, which is about what I was doing at the end of my medium tyre stint. So you can see I chose the best lap in terms of crossover point. But it does mean I have to spend slightly longer on this hard tyre, and as we go through each of these traction zones, remember I sort of said earlier that these traction zones are really where your tyre difference is going to come to light, come to fruition, make itself really obvious, and now I'm on the other end of that. It is very obvious here that Ocean Zero has the pace advantage there. He's not quite in the slipstream range there, which is really where he needed to be, but maybe give it one more lap. In fact, give it the chicane and he may be in the slipstream. We'll see how we go as we absolutely send it into the chicane here. Got to make sure not to brake too late though. You can cut basically the first 3 apexes, but then you can't go anywhere near the last one. for some reason, inconsistent track limits is quite annoying and quite a big issue in Gran Turismo in general. I really wish they would just sort of make a track limit that was consistent on all corners, on all tracks. That would make it really, really nice, but unfortunately I think that's too much to ask for. The last of the hard tyre runners ahead of me, Hisense, goes into the pits. As we headed through that chicane as well, that gap to Ocean Zero did not really change. It's down to 1 second. He's still not quite within the slipstream range. Oh, actually, he's just in the slipstream range now that we've headed into a braking zone. So with those medium tyres bolted onto Ocean Zero's Subaru, I believe he's driving, he's going to have a grip advantage pretty much everywhere, so braking and especially traction zones like I've mentioned, and he's right close behind me now, about half a second behind me, and we have a little bit of a wiggle heading out of turn 3 as we head down this middle straight through this flat out dog leg, as it's called. 4 tenths behind Ocean Zero now, so let's see if we can sort of get a really good exit out of this one. Wide entry, but oh, he's taken the invitation to send it up the inside. He's able to brake so much later. He's got more grip on turn in and more grip on the exit. So he sends it up the inside. Let's see if he completes the move around the outside of this left-hander now, and he gets a better exit out onto the straight as my car sort of skips sideways on one of the bumps. That's another thing about Daytona, really bumpy as well. Out of turn 1 and out of turn 7 especially are some of the bumpiest sections on the track, and that can just really upset the car. We are going to have slipstream though, and we're only 2 tenths behind Ocean Zero, so we've got a pretty strong slipstream strength here, but we're not coming up into the best part of the track for it, so I just hang behind and figure I'm better off getting this sort of slipstream down towards turn 1. Oh, I get a really bad chicane actually. The car just sort of understeers halfway through on that change of direction. That really crucial change of direction, and then I get a little bit of oversteer on the exit as well. So understeer followed by oversteer. Now all of a sudden I find myself half a second behind Ocean Zero, so that probably would have been some of the dirty air that I'm getting off the back of Ocean Zero, just impacting my car's aerodynamic ability as we headed through that extremely important rendition of the Le Mans chicane. And now, unfortunately for me, instead of sort of slipstreaming past Ocean Zero into turn 1 here, I now find myself a good few tenths behind, and with Ocean Zero having the full downforce effect with no cars ahead of him, and the softer tyres, and all the traction zones that we're getting in this infield section, I find it really hard to see myself becoming a particularly big threat to Ocean Zero once we get out onto the slipstreaming opportunities in the main flat-out sections here at Daytona. So we're half a second behind him now. I've not lost too much time. I think I've only lost about a tenth so far. We get a much more defined apex than Ocean Zero does there, but I think perhaps he keeps the momentum up a little bit on the exit. He does. That gap has opened up to about 8 tenths. I can't lose any time out of this turn in order to still be a threat to Ocean Zero, but as we get onto the power, the car just steps sideways. That gap opens up to 1 second, and that is the slipstream range broken, so all I can do here is stay as close to the inside as I possibly can, and I think at this particular stage I still can't quite work out if one of us is any better in a straight line. I think we're just about even, so I think this element of the bop is not too bad. But with the tyre advantage that Ocean Zero had, and I was not able to make an impression on the straight with any slipstream of any kind, he was just able to drive away. So he's up in second, 3 seconds ahead of me at this particular stage, so there's not really going to be any chance of getting second or even first unless either of the drivers ahead of me make a mistake. The real big risk I've got at the moment is, remember Awesome? He was 5 seconds behind me on the exit of the pits with the medium tyres, a brand new set of medium tyres on the car. He's now 1.5 seconds behind me, so through this sort of latter stint here, this second stint, he was able to use those tyres to great effects to be able to try and close down that gap, and he's done a pretty good job actually. He's caught, you know, over 3 seconds in this last stint here on the softer tyre, but what Awesome will be finding and discovering that his advantage to me will drop off as the race goes on, because those medium tyres are wearing faster than my hards. Eventually there's got to be a time where they cross over, like I found on about lap 7 of my stint. I don't remember what lap Awesome went in. I think it was 2 laps after me. So I think maybe Awesome is beginning to feel the effects of the tyre wear on the medium tyre, and that gap is still about 1.5 seconds. So he's got to 1.5, and that's basically as close as he's able to get so far. Let's see as we head through this lap 17. He's got 2 laps left to try and get closer. He's only really got to gain half a second, because then he can sort of gain the rest in slipstream on the back straights. But as we exit this turn here, have a look. Awesome goes tumbling down the order. He's made a grave error on the exit of turn 3. And that is that's the pressure behind release, and I was really quite worried. Let's have a look at exactly what happened. He got himself caught up in some sort of incident. Oh, he's just slipped up on the exit curb, and it spun him to the inside. And remember how I mentioned the main pack is all bunched up? That is still the case, and having just a tiny little mistake like Awesome did just means he lost about 5 or 6 positions there. But as for me, Meta 7 that was released by Awesome's mistake wasn't really able to make an impression on me, and as far as the gap to the leader, it opened up to 9 seconds, a little over 9 seconds. But I think overall, I was able to pick up this podium here. Oh man, did you see all of pretty much everyone from 5th to 8th cross the line at exactly the same time? That would have been a really interesting drag race up to the finish line there. But a podium, I was able to pick up a podium in this particular race, and it wasn't a bad lobby either. So that was pretty much the caliber of driver that I normally race in the Nations Cup. You know, Oa Yoga and Meta 7 sort of right there, ready to pick up the pieces. But that was a particularly strong result for me, and I think it really just stemmed from piecing together the qualifying lap. 282 points there, and that's pretty much the best I could ever ask for, basically. Ocean Zero and Massa were clearly on a different level. That Subaru WRX is a pretty strong car in Gran Turismo at the moment. Just really good on tyres, really good on fuel, really good on traction. There's not too much that I can do to try and catch those 2 drivers that are normally faster than me any day of the week anyway. I will shout out Meta 7. He did a really good job to actually recover. I think he qualified in like 12th or something, and then by the end of the race he's up in 4th. So he was able to make the best of his race, and obviously selected the best strategy for exactly what ended up going down in that race. But yes, 3rd place, really happy with that, really satisfied with that, and I was actually able to finally get a race in at Daytona. This combination actually came up in one of the test seasons, and I was going to do it, but the race kind of crashed and never got started, and I wasn't really able to justify any further slots. So yeah, my previous race before this one at Daytona was a no-go, did not get going, but in this race here I certainly did get going, and I managed to go good enough to pick up this sensational podium position. But that's not the end of this one today. I do apologise once again for the lengthy delay since the previous video. I think a bit of real life just gets in the way, you know, and trying to finish up these official seasons just takes a lot of the time. I've also got to edit the podcast, which I've got other people relying on me for, so sometimes I think I must prioritise that, because that's not just me. But I've got plenty of videos on the way with the end of pretty much the manufacturers, the Nations Cup, and another round of the Toyota Cup on the way, and there's actually a bit of a gap as well, because those seasons at the time of recording this commentary have now finished, except for Toyota Cup. The next race is a few weeks away. So I should be able to catch up plenty and hopefully get a couple of streams in as well. But anyway, this video is going to end here, so do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos and streams from me. Do leave a comment as well, as questions, comments and constructive criticism, as always, very much appreciated. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.